Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are back with kind of an unofficial part 2 of my philodendron collection. By the way, thank you guys for showing that video so much love. I honestly wasn't really expecting that much reception to it. Like, it's been up for 2 days and it's almost at 7,000 views, which is good by my standards. And so yeah, I'm just happy to see so many philodendron lovers still here in the hobby because I feel like we are a dying breed. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Today we're just going to be going over a Q&A. So I took some questions on Instagram. Hopefully I can answer most of your questions. I did not include the questions that I didn't feel comfortable answering in terms of my confidence in giving you an answer that is sufficient or even just, I don't know, even subpar or something. So I think I have like about 20 questions to get through. And then at the very end, we will just quickly go through my philodendron wish list. Also, the shirt that I'm wearing is part of the new, I'm not gonna say release. It was just like a small launch that I did in my merch shop. There's a few different styles. There's the Eraceae one, philodendron, monstera, anthurium. Some people have requested Hoya, alocasia, so I think I'm going to slowly add more genus to the shop. But yeah, I'm wearing the Eraceae one. Obviously this is a size medium. There's a good range of sizes and also colors, so I will link that in the description if you want to check it out. But yeah, we're just gonna get started because we have a lot to talk about today. By the way, I have a timer going for every 30 minutes because I'm gonna be sitting here for a while and I'm supposed to be walking around every 30 minutes. So anywho, obviously just gonna be kind of looking at my phone a few times because I have all my notes on here. Which way do I wanna scoot? I'll scooch this way, just in case I need to insert some photos and stuff. So the first question that I got was, how do you prevent EFN stains? If you don't know what EFN is, it's extrafloral nectaries, and it's basically a sap that secretes from the plant. You'll typically see it on the undersides of the leaves. It's very sticky. It's essentially a sap that protects the plant against herbivory, and herbivory is essentially animals feeding on plants. And you're gonna notice that it's gonna be really, really dominant or heavy in the newer leaves, and then it kind of fades off with the older leaves. And yeah, it can get it, so it's a natural process. It attracts ants, and there's like this whole symbiosis between the ants and the plant that produces EFN. But obviously in our hobby where we're growing it indoors, we don't have ants to come collect the sap. It kind of just sits there and it gets really, sticky, and it can get a little bit annoying. I'm gonna insert a photo of my Glorious, which is one of my most EFN heavy plants in my collection. It's something that I've really sort of struggled with this plant ever since owning it. I don't find it a very difficult plant to grow or to size up or just to keep happy in general, but the EFN seems to just kind of persist on that plant no matter what. And you'll see that it kind of leaves little marks on the front of the leaf. It's almost like fungally looking spots. But you can rule out a fungal issue if you're noticing that the drop of sap on the back sort of matches with the spot in the front. The only way I've really been able to not prevent it, but combat it or keep up with it are regular showers. I know that's kind of annoying because especially the larger the plant is, the more leaves the plant has. If you don't have a big shower to put it in, it just it can feel impossible to keep up with it at the rate that it pushes out EFN, but really it's the only way that I've known to prevent the spots from taking over the leaves. Obviously, if you can't stick it in the shower, I would recommend just wiping it down if you can. And you're gonna wanna wipe down the back of the leaf. I find that wiping down the front of the leaf really doesn't do anything at all because EFN, it's like I said, it's going to be on the abaxial, so on the back of the leaf. It's going to present on the petioles and then also on the midrib of the front of the leaf. So really having to wipe down the front, it's not going to do anything for the EFN. You want to target the back where the sap actually is. So there's that. And then I also kind of observed over the years that my philodendron that are reacting to stress, whether that be an environmental change, a shift in the season, pests, especially pests, it pushes out an excess of EFN. And I kind of think it's like a stress reactor thing. So I noticed with my Gloriosum zebra, that one got the worst case of spider mites like ever. And the spots on it, I don't know if I have a photo of it still, but the spots on it were so bad. And when you flipped the leaf over, it was just covered in EFN. It was like the worst I'd ever seen it. And so I just kind of feel like when a plant is undergoing some kind of stressor, it pushes out EFN just sort of as a response. So if you can try and keep your plant stress-free in the sense of maybe not forgetting to water, like keeping a good watering regimen, giving it like good or the best environmental conditions you can give it, because I do notice that in seasonal changes, a lot of my philodendron will react kind of poorly, the ones that are not in like a controlled greenhouse or a controlled environment. And then also keeping pests away. I mean, I'm not the best at that. I think if you guys have been on this channel long enough, you'll know how transparent I am about the pest issues that I constantly have. And for sure, my philodendron have reacted to the outbreak of pests. And the increase in EFN has just been insane during a pest outbreak. So that's really the only thing I can provide to you in terms of EFN. I don't know how to prevent it. I don't think you can prevent it because it is a natural process. It's basically like telling a plant to not be a plant. But you kind of just like make do with what you have. And I think to a certain extent, you almost have to accept that the plant is gonna have EFN, it's gonna present spots, it's gonna have a little bit of cosmetic damage, and I think if you're okay with that, then it really isn't a huge issue. Moving on to the next question. I'm really not going in any particular order. I literally just started compiling questions, gathered all the most frequently asked ones, and then just put it together in a list, so we're not going for like care in a category and then whatever. Like, I'm really just answering random questions. So I hope that's okay. So we're kind of gonna be jumping around a little bit. Should I bring these plants out? Ow! I'm not gonna say it, but people who have been pregnant, you know what just hit me right now. You know what just hit me. Oh my gosh. You guys knew this was coming. You knew it was coming, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But if you're gonna ask me what my favorite philodendron is, it's gonna be the tortellini, the tortum. Oh my gosh, I can't even fit it in the frame, and you can't really see much with the busy background, but yeah, I'm not gonna go into all the details of why this is my favorite philodendron. I think you all have heard it like a broken record over the last 2 years. But yeah, this is my favorite philodendron. I just have a love for it that I can't really explain. It does something to me that my other philodendron don't do. I feel like it just has such a uniqueness to it that, yeah, it's unmatched. But here's something I've never said before. I kind of want to keep this behind me the whole time if I can. Okay, watch it hit my head multiple times. So here's one thing I've never told you guys about the tortum. Oh my gosh, I hit my disco ball and the sparklies are like going everywhere. So I love the tortum in this form, the way these leaves look now. But as they mature, like really mature, I don't love them. And I'm sad to say that, but my consolation is that, and it's kind of weird to say, I feel like I'm never gonna grow it to that maturity level. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I am growing it indoors, or I just feel like it's gonna hit a max size and maturity characteristic, and it'll just kind of stay there, because this is not a plant that I'm gonna let grow to the ceiling. At some point I am gonna chop it back so that I can fit it where I need to fit it. And I think that when you constantly chop your plants back, you know, you do set it back a bit, you're cutting off that root system, you're sending it into some shock. And so I'm oddly I'm oddly hopeful that my tortum can just stay like this. I actually don't even really need the leaves to get any bigger than this. I'm really happy with this size, and I wouldn't mind if this was kind of a forever thing and it just kept growing and I had a little tortum tree in my house all the time. But I don't want to see it hit the maturity level that it kind of loses that, I don't know, the essence about it that I love. It kind of reminds me of another plant that I thought I really loved until I saw a mature photo of it, and I was like, not quite sure I love that. Kind of like, and it's not like the tortum, but kind of like the Mexicanum. Love the Mexicanum a lot. I love it as a juvenile plant. I love it as sort of like a medium or even large size plant. But once it goes into like full maturity, it just loses that spark for me. So same thing with the tortum. We're gonna see where things go. And you know, if anything, if I ever do hit a maturity point where I'm starting to not like the shape of the leaf, or the characteristics of the leaf, the good thing is I can always chop back and start over again, because this is really not a plant that I can live without. Like, I would always love to have this plant in my house if I could. And so that's kind of the beauty of plants, is you can just start over whenever you want, kind of try and keep it at a size or maturity look that you like. So that's gonna be my goal with this tortum, but as it stands, she is definitely my favorite and has yet to be dethroned. But now we're gonna go into my least favorite philodendron in my collection, and that is gonna be my serpens that has spider mites. Good, we love it. So this is her right now. It's not that I don't like it because of the way it looks. I actually think serpens are Gorgina. I love them a lot. I think when they're grown well, they are just absolutely incredible plants. So you've seen what mine looks like. She looks like cockapoo. I'm gonna take her off the screen and I'm going to spray the crap out of her as soon as I'm done filming. But let me just show you some nicer serpens for your viewing pleasure. The reason that this is my least favorite philodendron is just because of its care and its difficulty, at least for me. As I've matured in this hobby, I have less of a tolerance for plants that just clearly don't like being grown indoors, or don't like being grown in the conditions that I give it, or in the, let's say, the substrate I put it in, if it doesn't like no drainage, but I really want it to be in no drainage. And I know that sounds kind of like bratty, like when you think about it, like, oh, whatever, like I hate you because you won't grow the way I want you to grow. But I really don't mean it like that. I just mean I've learned to kind of curate my collection to a point where I've kept plants around that have worked with my schedule, that have worked with what I need a plant to do where I put it. And so we kind of have that relationship that works for both of us. And I really am not in a place now, or even in the last year, where I'm trying to force a plant to do something that it doesn't want to do. And I feel like I'm kind of teetering on that scale with, not scale, but I'm teetering with the serpens right now. I think she, over the last year, has kind of told me that she doesn't like the way I care for her. She doesn't like the conditions I'm giving her. Like, it's just clearly not really working out. And as much as I love the serpens, and I think it's such a cool plant and it's such a cool contrast to my other philodendron, I'm not quite sure how long this relationship will keep going. I do love a good challenge, but I'm very selective with my challenges now. And I used to think that because I had a YouTube channel, I had to take on every challenge possible and I had to prove a plant wrong, but that's just not the case anymore. I think I'm definitely in a place where I'm like, nope, threw in the towel, I'm good. I don't like that plant enough to like invest the time unless I'm really trying to learn and understand a plant. I think a good example of that is my soderini. I mean, I would say that I like the Soderoi soderini more than the serpens. I think that's more of a philodendron, that's my speed, that has the features that I typically really love in a plant. And that's kind of why I took on that challenge of trying to grow it from this really naughty, defiant little juvenile plant, and I took the time to really baby it and nurture it and understand what it liked. But I don't quite have that relationship with the serpens. I don't feel that instinct to want to keep trying. Obviously, I haven't given up just yet, which is why it's still in my house. But honestly, just like full transparency, I don't know how much longer we're gonna be here together. So anywho, long story short, not long story short, that was just long story long. That's the least favorite plant in my collection, or least favorite philodendron in my collection. So when I answer questions like this, I try to not insert anyone's photos from like their personal accounts or like Instagram. Like I really try and take off of Google or like educational websites where it's not like someone posted this plant because they love it. It's like I don't want to use anyone's content online in like a negative way, which is why if you noticed when I'm talking about a plant negatively, I'll only use my photos, friends' photos with their permission, or just kind of like random Google images that I don't believe are from like someone's personal account. So I'm gonna try and do that with this next question, and those are philodendrons I hate. I have a long list here, I really do. And this is please don't take offense to this. This is just my opinion. My opinion does not matter at all. It should not matter to you. Everyone can like what they want to like, and that's totally fine. I know that there are probably plenty of plants in my collection that people are just like, ew, why do you have it? Or whatever. And I don't take offense to it because I like what I like and I don't let anyone tell me otherwise. So keep that in mind while I'm going through this list, please. So the first one is gonna be the philodendron Birkin. When this plant first dropped, like in our local stores, and people were going absolutely bananas bonkers for it, I couldn't understand. Like I was just like, why? Like it's so, I don't know. I mean, I guess I can see the appeal for some people. Like it's a self-heading plant, and it's interesting because I love the Rojo Congo, I love the green Congo, but there's something about the Birkin that just like, I just don't like it. To me, I look at that plant and it's not an appealing plant for me. It's not a plant that I would ever want. And I also think, honestly, there's probably just like a bad taste in my mouth from the Birkin, because when they released locally, there was like a whole frenzy and drama, people wanting to get them and some people buying out pallets of them. And I just like, I associate it in a negative way. So yeah, that's just one plant that I've just never really understood the hype. And I need to grab my pomegranate juice. Oh, the second one is the philodendron silver sword. The silver sword stands are gonna come for me hard in this video. I can feel it, but this is another one that I don't like. And it's weird, and I can't tell you why, because you guys might know that I love silvery plants, especially silvery philodendron. It just kind of like speaks to me, and I used to have a whole exo dedicated to silver plants. But the silver sword is just one that like, it's not that I think it's ugly. It's not that I think it's like the worst plant in the world. I guess I just don't understand the appeal of it when people go so hard for it like it's the best plant ever. I just don't see it. But again, that's just my opinion. I don't know, I've always looked at that plant in stores and just thought like, I just wouldn't waste any space trying to house that thing, especially because it's self-heading and because the leaves can get so massive, like it just takes up so much space. I don't know, I just don't see the appeal. I think there's so many other prettier There are prettier silver philodendron out there that I'd much rather dedicate my time to, dedicate my space to. And yeah, the silver sword is just not it for me. Ugh, the next one gets on my freaking nerves. The philodendron brantianum. Okay, I'm not going to rag on this plant for the way it looks. I actually love the way the brandy looks, and I've tried so many times growing it, and that's probably why I'm so salty. But there is not one person that I know personally or even follow on Instagram that isn't living in like a tropical region that grows the brandy very well. And I'm just gonna say it, I'm very sorry. Most of the brandies I see are growing on moss poles with super long internodes, no real size growth. It's like a little pube just climbing up a moss pole, and I just don't, I just hate it so much. That plant, I don't know what it wants. I really don't. I feel like that was one of the plants that I thought was gonna be like my next soderini. I was like, I'm gonna crack the code, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna get it to size up. I could barely even get like a leaf to form out of like a petiolor sheath. It was so difficult. I tried so many different growing conditions, substrates, humidity levels, temperatures. Nothing really worked for that plant. And yeah, it was very frustrating. And it's frustrating because it's so pretty. It's pretty when it's juvenile, and it's super pretty. It's even prettier when it matures. There's like not a bad, it doesn't really have an ugly preteen phase, in my opinion. It's just a pretty freaking plant that just plays hard to get. Yeah, so that's why I hate it. I hate it because I love it. I hate to love it. I hate love it. The next one is the philodendron golden goddess. In general, I'm just not really a fan of the bright yellow leaves. The only plant, honestly, that I like that has this leaf color is the philodendron, like philodendron Can I talk? Philodendron hederaceum bar oxycardium, the neon one. I think that one is really pretty. I don't remember if I've ever owned one before, but I wouldn't mind adding one to like my shelf or something for a little bit of contrast. So that's really the only plant I like that has that color. So I don't know, yeah, there are plants that are this color that I just don't really, I don't get, I don't like it. This is one of them. I look at this plant and I just see sort of like an eyesore, or I see, I don't know, it just seems like it doesn't bring like nice earthy zen vibes to me. It kind of stresses me out a little bit. It kind of makes me feel anxious when I look at it, and I don't know why. So yeah, I just never really understood the appeal of that one. And again, not ragging on anyone who's, if that's your favorite plant, you just freaking ignore me. But yeah, this plant is just absolutely, it does nothing for me. The next one is the philodendron snowdrift. Gotta walk around. Yeah, the snowdrift is another one that I don't really love. I think more so not because of the way it looks, but the negativity slash elitism. Okay, can I talk? The negativity and elitism that I tie with this plant. I think if you were in the hobby pre-2020 or even in 2020, you'll know that only really the collectors, like the ones that have been in it for a long time, like they had it. And I'm not saying that all collectors who had it were elitist or were snobby or anything, but there were quite a few that were very vocal online and were very showy online. Not that it's a crime to show off your plants, but it was the way that they would show it off, like, oh, like this is my unicorn snowdrift, not for sale, don't ask me for cuttings, got it from a collector, can't say where I got it from. Like there was just this like weird secrecy slash like high horsism that came with the snowdrift back then. And even when they dropped in price and got super affordable and attainable, I was just like, nope, don't want it, get it away from me, I don't want it. I will admit there are some snowdrifts that I've seen that have a really, really pretty leaf, but I don't love the growth pattern of the snowdrift. I don't love the leaf shape either. I think besides the variegation on it, when it does grow well and has good genetics, that's probably the only thing that it has going for it, in my opinion. But other than that, it's kind of just this, I don't know, it's just like a whatever plant to me. And even back then, before it got really attainable, I didn't really see the appeal of it compared to other variegated plants or other variegated philodendron. So yeah, this is just one that just like meh. Even if like it was offered to me for free, I would not take it. The golden dragon is another one that I've never really been able to get on board with. It's interesting because I love the plants in like the Florida family. So I've had a Florida green, I've had a Florida ghost, I have a Florida beauty, I had a pedatum, I had a, I'm missing one that I had, but you get it. Like I really liked that shape of the leaf, the texture of the leaf, but I don't know, the golden dragon, I never really liked the shape of that leaf either. I feel like it didn't have like the quirkiness and cuteness that something like the Florida green has. It just was like a, I don't know, a whatever plant for me. And whenever I would see people going crazy for it, like before, I can't remember where I saw it, but like a cutting of it was going for just an insane amount and people were going crazy for it. And I just like, I don't know, I was just like, why? Like why? Like I just don't see the appeal. So there's that one. And then this one kind of goes hand in hand with the brandy. It's the lupinum. I think the lupinum is so cool, even as a small juvenile plant, because it's like, it's heart-shaped, it's cute and dainty, it's velvety, it's got a really, really like burgundy reddish back. And then as it matures, it just like grows into this massive, beautiful thing that you would never expect even grew from that tiny little lupinum. Like its juvenile form and its mature form are just so vastly different. And I like both of them. Feel like it's one of those plants, again, like the brandy, where no matter where you are in your maturity level, it's like a plant that you can appreciate in terms of the way the leaf looks. But again, like the brandy, to me, it was just so impossible to grow. It was so hard to grow. I've always started with a really juvenile plant. I've never, because I know there are online places or importers or exporters, I should say, that will sell you a lupinum that's already kind of in its mature form. And I don't know the ease of maintaining that size and sizing it up even larger in an indoor environment like mine. But I'll say that growing it from a tiny thing was an absolute nightmare. Probably even worse than the brandy. I would just have the aborted leaves getting stuck in the petiolar sheath, deformed, ugly looking leaves. Yeah, I couldn't get it to even attach to a pole, let alone try and size up the leaf. It was just a complete and utter failure, which was too bad because when I first got that plant, I had such high hopes that I would be able to get a lupinum to size up, and that just was not the case for me. So unfortunately, I've had to add this to my list of plants I hate but really love-hate. I love to hate it, or I hate to love it. Actually, both ways. The next one is the philodendron Worsvecii. I think that's how you say it. I think it's a Polish name. It's named after a Polish botanist or something like that. So Worsvecii. I just straight up hate this plant. I just think it's so ugly. I think it looks like a plant that went through a shredder. I just don't see the appeal in both the juvenile form and the mature form. To me, it just looks even worse as it matures. I don't know. I just looked at this plant and was like, please, I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Like I hate it so much. That's probably the one plant on this list where I'm just like, it's just straight up ugly to me. Like I just don't see the appeal at all. So I don't want to go too hard for it. So I'm going to leave it there. But yeah, that one has to be top of my hate list. And then the last one is the philodendron Bob C. I feel like you either love the Bob C or you hate the Bob C. And this is just another plant that I don't see the appeal of. Kind of like the golden dragon, just kind of looks boring, bland. Nothing super special about it. As the leaf matures, it just kind of looks, just kind of looks like a plant. I don't know. It doesn't look like a plant that I like look twice at. There's just no appeal there for me. So Bob C, see you later, Bob C. We don't like Bob C here. So yeah, that is the whole list of the philodendron that I hate. That was rough. I'm so sorry. I really hope I didn't offend anyone, but you know, we are all entitled to our opinions. And then the next question, what are your all-time easiest, favorite, recommended philodendron? So I only have 4 on this list, surprisingly. And when I was adding to this list, I was trying to think of plants that, like, if you were to gift it to someone who knows nothing about plants, I feel like they would be okay at growing it. So the first one is gonna be, some of you know this is probably coming, the philodendron billietiae. I don't know, okay, fine. I could see it both ways. I've had people ask me, like, how do you keep the philodendron billietiae growing nicely and not kind of all over the place? I will say that that's one challenging thing about the billy. I've said this in my philodendron collection video, that if you can give it good light right up front and at the top, it's gonna grow so nicely. But other than that, and like the likelihood of it having a mile-long petiole, if it's given low light conditions, which I also showed an example of, to me, this is a plant that just like grows and just continues to grow. It doesn't drop very many leaves, in my opinion. Doesn't require a lot. You don't have to put it in high humidity, doesn't need high temperatures, and it doesn't even really need a pole to size up. Like, both of my billies are growing so well in terms of sizing up their leaves without a pole. Obviously, it probably would do much better on a pole, but that's probably not a plant that I would really ever put a pole on, just because the leaves are sizing up without it. And so I don't know. I just don't see it. Seems unnecessary at this point. The second one is gonna be a philodendron burley marx. This one is, I don't know if it's considered like an invasive species anywhere, but I wouldn't doubt if it was, just because of how vigorous the growth is. I think if you've ever owned a philodendron burley marx, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's no like axillary bud, there's no node you have to chop. It just kind of pushes out growth from wherever it can fit on the stem. It's kind of like tissue culture gone wild. So yeah, this one really doesn't require much either. Like the billy, doesn't need high temperatures, high humidity, doesn't even need a lot of light. I've grown a burley marx in a dark corner and it just turned into like a bush. That one just has the will to live. I'll say the one challenge that I can see growing this plant is keeping up with the growth. In my opinion, it's kind of a good problem to have if you don't have many plants. Like if you're one of those plant parents that just has like 5 or 6 plants in their collection, like this is to me, it's a walk in the park. But if you have as many plants as, you know, let's say I do, yeah, you maybe don't want a plant that grows as vigorously as the burley marx, unless you're allowing it to kind of just like turn into a tree, which it will. But otherwise, I find it to be such an easy plant. The next one is going to be the green Congo / Rojo Congo. I have owned both and I love them both very much. I say this is an easy one because one, it's self-heading, so it doesn't need a pole, doesn't need any really kind of support stick or anything. It's just gonna grow upward and support itself. 2, I think the leaves are beautiful. It's got this, I think I enjoyed cleaning Congo leaves more than any other plant in my collection that I've ever owned, ever. When I had a green Congo and a Rojo Congo, I would seek out, like I would hope that there was like a layer of dust or something on the leaves just so I had an excuse to wipe it down. All you need is water and like a microfiber cloth to polish it, and it's just, it's just so good. Light, it was just kind of getting diffused light. I never really prioritized putting it in a window or putting grow lights or anything. But keep in mind that with lower light, you're probably not gonna get those really nice, big, beautiful leaves. So you'll get growth, but maybe not the size that you want. So if you're aiming for the big, you know, Congo leaves, I would definitely prioritize light. But in terms of care, so easy. And then the last one is the philodendron Florida green. And yeah, this is one that I did a video on it, and I will link it in the description. And I just wasn't really expecting that plant to be as easy as it was. Really did not throw any tantrum after a pretty invasive repot. It was sizing up really, really well just with a bamboo stick. It probably didn't even need the stick. The only reason I had it was because it was getting so tall. It didn't require any special humidity or temperature requirements, even light to a certain extent. It was growing in probably at most, like the worst condition I probably gave it was maybe like 30 foot candles of light in the winter, and it was still growing like a hot damn. So if you are wanting to gift a plant to someone who's maybe not like a complete noob at plants, but someone who's like interested in getting into the more harder to find plants, I would say Florida green is probably a good place to start in terms of building up confidence, kind of learning the way of philodendron, because it does push out EFN, so they'll get to learn about EFN, has the ability to climb, and so they can learn about moss poles and stuff. So for me, this is just like such a great beginner aroid. Quickly gonna go through this one. Somebody asked if I had any luck with notching my philodendron. The answer is yes. I have successfully notched a few. It's not my go-to method in terms of propagating, but I have done it, and I have done it successfully, meaning I was able to get growth to push out of it. I'm going to include a video where I notched philodendron on camera, and then I think that I must have done an update on that notching video. So I'm gonna try and find that video too and link it in the description. But to answer your question, yes, I've had luck with notching philodendron, but not as successful. That method has not been as successful as something that's arborous, like a dracaena, fiddle leaf fig, a rubber tree-like plants. But it's not impossible. It can be done. Is the islemanii being tissue cultured? Why are they still so expensive? I don't know much about this plant, to be honest. I did have it out on my wish list at one point, but that sort of faded away very quickly, and it's not really even a plant that I want anymore. But I wouldn't doubt if it's been tissue cultured. I don't see why it wouldn't be, considering how expensive it's been historically, and still is kind of. I just feel like where there's an opportunity to make money, people will jump on it. Again, I don't know if it's been tissue cultured, but I have read that it's notoriously hard to root, and it just takes a really long time to get established. And so I think maybe that's why the price point is what it's at, because of its more difficult nature of rooting it. That's just my guess, completely uneducated guess. That's just my opinion, but that's really all I know about the islemanii, unfortunately. Sorry for being so cash, but I'm like really uncomfortable these days. Which is why I'm sitting in this chair. I'm gonna go through a list now. A few people asked what some of my underrated philodendron opinions are. So got a solid little list here. So the first one is gonna be the philodendron mayoi, or mayoi. And this is probably one of my first imported aroids, and one that that I remember being so incredibly smitten of, and like when it came into my collection, I was just like in disbelief that I had it. I still am in awe of that plant anytime I see one that's really mature. I feel like the juvenile mayois are not really anything to write home about. It's the mature ones that just really get me. And as much as I love that plant, it's just one that I'm not really great at growing. I had a hard time sizing the leaves up. I did have a mature plant, and the new leaves, although given what I would consider just like perfect greenhouse conditions, and a pole, humidity, all of that, it just kept sizing down and down. And I can't even blame it on like a specific specimen, because I've had quite a few of them. This fungus gnat is gonna drive me crazy. He keeps flying in front of the But then, you know, you have plenty of people in the hobby that have conditions not much different than mine that are growing it just fine. My friend Jing is growing hers really well in her tent. So it's a me thing. It's not a Maioi thing, it's a me thing. But I do love this plant and I think it's very underrated. I rarely see people kind of posting about it, or like, you know how you see on Facebook threads, it's like, oh, show me your monstera, or show me this, show me your variegated alocasia. Like, you never really see anyone being like, I want to see your Maioi. But I think that along with the elegans are both really, really cool plants that just kind of often go overlooked, but I think if you can grow it well, it's one that you would really appreciate having. Same goes with the Xanadu. I'm not going to go too much into the Xanadu. I just feel like it kind of has that similar look as the Maioi with like the pinnations on it. I think that's the right word for it. The pinnations. I love this plant. I love it so much. As a juvenile plant, not much to look at, but as it matures and it gets like that really dark glossy leaf with the really prominent, I would say, mid vein, and just that nice Xanadu. I'm gonna throw in a photo of what I'm talking about. It gets that nice Xanadu shape. Plus, once it starts, and you can prune it back, obviously, but when it has the trunk exposed, oh my gosh, it just looks so cool. It's like, that's one plant that I would love to see just like in a corner of my house somewhere, like on the floor in a cute little basket. But I just cannot grow Xanadu for the life of me. Not only does it push out so much EFN, but I also find that it's very susceptible to rust fungus. So that was kind of annoying. But whenever I see a really mature Xanadu, whether in photos or in person, I'm always just floored. I just think it's so stinking beautiful. So yeah, that one is a very underrated one for me too. And it's funny because all of these plants really on this list are ones that like I just can't grow for crap. So the next one is gonna be the Esmeraldense Narrow. I find it interesting that a plant like the Patriciae gets so much love and so much hype, but then like the Esmeraldense Narrow is just kind of overlooked as like the whatever stepsister. They're like so similar in like the color, obviously not the leaf shape because it's not like a pendant leaf. It's not really a pendant leaf, is it? I mean, I think you guys know what I mean, but it has the like ability to get really nice and ribbed, get really long, and it's like, if you love the Patriciae, why wouldn't you love the Esmeraldense Narrow? It's just such a cool plant. I've tried multiple times growing that plant. Again, just didn't work out for me. The next one is going to be a Soderoy Af. I owned one of these before. I didn't find it very difficult to grow in terms of getting new leaves, but this was another one that pushed out so much EFN and was also susceptible to copper rust fungus. At least in my care, I was able to rule out EFN because it would get spots without having any kind of sap on it. But that was such a freaking cutie pie plant. I loved everything about it. I loved the leaf shape. I loved the leaf texture. I loved the sheen on it. I loved the emergent leaves. Hopefully I can find the one that I had before. It was just such a freaking cool plant. And I don't really see people talking about it very much, but I really, really like it. I think it's a plant that, like, if I was given another opportunity to own it, to try again, I probably would, just because I almost feel like there's kind of a lack of like the big leafy philodendrons in my collection. Like, I have a few forms of gloriosum. I have the El Guapo, 2 forms of the El Guapo. I have the McDowell, but I just feel like I need more. I feel like I don't have enough, and if I were to add another one, it would probably be the Soderoy Af. So put that one on your radar because she's a good one. The next one is the Philodendron Sherbericii. Actually, wait, I should say Philodendron Sherbericii equigenera. I was floored when I first saw this plant. My friend Erin imported it a few years ago, and I was just like, why is nobody talking about this? Like, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Just has like a nice glossy, super ribby leaf. Kind of unlike a lot of the philodendron that you're gonna see like on the market right now. And keep in mind, the Sherberichii and the Sherberichii equigenera are very different. I've seen both and they look nothing alike. But with the Sherberichii, I just couldn't grow it for jack crap. I found it to be a very, very difficult plant to root. I started with like a full plant, then I took cuttings from it, couldn't get those to root, eventually died. And it just, yeah, it was a little bit of a heartbreaker. But if you are up for a challenge, I guess, I would give this one a try. It's really, really, it's a really nice plant. I think another one that goes pretty overlooked is the philodendron mame. And I think it's because, one, they're pretty common. And so, you know, you kind of look at a common philodendron that's being offered everywhere on every import list and you're like, kind of like, whatever. And then I also think there was like a bad tissue culture batch that went out last year and this year where they just like look gross, where you're just like, why would I want that in my house? But I'm talking about like a good mame. It can get so round and so pillowy and so puffy. And depending on the variegation, like there's some mames where it's very highly variegated with the silver/white, and then there's some that it's a little bit less and it's more on the green. But when they're big and mature, you just want to pinch it. You just want to pinch its cheeks. It's so cute. The reason I don't have a mame is because I'm just kind of crap at growing it, which is weird because I've heard that it's so easy and it's not a plant that you need to worry about like putting in a greenhouse or whatever. It just kind of lives wherever, but I just don't have that experience. But if you are better at growing plants like that than I am, then yeah, give the mame a shot. Be patient enough to see it through sort of the juvenile stage of it, and wait till you get like your first big juicy leaf. It's gonna be worth it, I promise you. I've seen a big mame in person and just wow. The last one on this list is a philodendron splendid, and I kind of wish that I had the, so philodendron splendid, if you didn't know, it's a cross of a Milano and a varicosum. One of the coolest philodendron hybrids in my opinion. I didn't find this to be like very, very difficult, but I didn't find it to be as easy as something like the gloriosum either. I can't quite put my finger on why I don't have a splendid anymore. I don't know if I gave up on it. I don't know if it died. I don't know if it was pests. I can't remember. But I think about it often. This is a plant that is so common, it's everywhere, but I've never really lost the love for it that I had for it in the very beginning. I posted on my stories a couple days ago that I was thinking about kind of going down that road again with the splendid, and my friend Jesse, my sweet, sweet friend Jesse, who I love so much, he basically offered his to me, which I will show you here. And he was like, yeah, it's just getting too big. Like I need space for my other plants. And he's like, you know, I felt bad for throwing it out. And so I will be inheriting this plant. I need to make space. It's gonna go in my plant room. My God, that scared me. It's gonna go in my plant room somewhere. I have to make it work. And I'm gonna try so hard to keep the leaf growth on this plant because I'm gonna throw in a picture of a really mature splendid, and holy guacamole. It's like texture and color central. I love that it has like that greenish blue leaf color, but you get, because it's a thin leaf plant, but velvety, you still get some of that red from the abaxial come through. So it has, yeah, the greenish blue color, but then you get the hint of red through the venation. You get that pink little sinus. Perfect leaf shape. To me, there's nothing bad about this plant. There's really nothing bad about this plant. I love it a lot, and I'm so excited to start over again. Hopefully I'm not jinxing myself. I hope I have a better time this time, but I'm really gonna try because I want this to work so bad. So that's another philodendron that I think, just because it's so common, it just goes a little bit overlooked. But if you're looking for a really fun philodendron hybrid, I would, yeah, recommend this one. And I am due again for another walk around break, so I'm gonna go do that. Oh, all right, we have blood flow down south. Not there. Next one is, or the next question is, do you feel like philodendron are losing their appeal unless you get expensive ones? Unfortunately, yes. I think, well, here's the thing. I'm not like the best person to talk to get an opinion about like the history of trending plants, because I really only got into imported aroids in like the tail end of 2018/2019. And around that time, it seems like there was as much interest in philodendron as there were anthurium, maybe leaning more towards the philodendron side, because you didn't really see a lot of these anthurium hybrids being floated around as much as it is now, especially with the influx of people in the hobby since 2020, people learning how to hybridize plants themselves. I will say, compared to back then, I can see the anthurium hype being way bigger now than like the philodendron interest was even back then. I think at some point, maybe in around 2020, and it definitely reflected in the prices. There was sort of a peak of the philodendron craze, and that bubble has burst, because now you can buy philodendron that you normally would have paid $600, $700, $800 for. You can find them for like $45 now on an import list. And a lot of these sellers are, they're offering them in bulk. They're offering massive plants at crazy prices just to kind of, I think, to move them, because there's not so much interest. And even when I'm like browsing through buy sell trade Facebook groups, or even being a part of Lauren's live sales, the anthurium craze right now is insane. Like, everybody wants this hybrid, everybody wants a plant from that grower. I only have the plants that I do, the anthurium that I do, because of the people I surround myself with. I have lots of friends who are very, very generous, who love anthurium, and so it just eventually trickles down to me. And of course, I am super, super grateful for that. I love my anthurium. I'm not saying that I don't like them, but I think at heart, I'm still a philodendron girly. Like, when I think about where I feel the most confident in terms of growing plants, I'm gonna tell you it's with my philodendron. And yeah, it kind of sucks to see the love for it kind of dwindling down. I'm not gonna say it's gonna dwindle away completely. I think there will always be a little community of us that appreciate a philodendron, a good philodendron. But yeah, the craze, it's just, the love for it has definitely died down, especially in like a public way, since the anthurium craze has been going on. And I think another aspect of that is that it's so, I'm not gonna say difficult. Maybe difficult's the right word. But you're not gonna see a philodendron flower as much as an anthurium does. It's so much harder to get a philodendron to flower. I've never had success getting a philodendron to flower. I know people who have, but I have not been one of them. And I think because of that, there's not always like the new hybrids coming out. But I think if there were as many philodendron hybrids popping up as there are anthurium, I think that the philodendron craze wouldn't be as, not underground, but as quiet as it is now. It's just a little bit slower. But I do notice that when a new philodendron hybrid does come out, or it is released to the public, there is that group of people who are stoked about it, who are posting about it. Kind of like when the Summer Glory came out, Equigenera has come out with the pink glory? I think that's what it's called. This guy, which I guess I'm showing a spoiler. This one is also on my wish list. It's just so pretty. But meaning, like, if we could cross philodendron as fast, and honestly I would say as easy as anthurium, I think that there would certainly be a market for philodendron the way that there are for anthurium. But unfortunately, that's just not the world we live in. They're a little bit harder to give. They don't flower as much as anthurium do. So when it does, you really have to take advantage of it. And I feel like I'm pretty sure the process with pollinating philodendron is different than anthurium. I have no idea how to pollinate a philodendron, but I don't think that that is as common knowledge as anthurium breeding. How do you prevent leaves getting stuck in the sheath? Okay, so I think what this comes down to really is root health and nutrients. That's one aspect of it, one very important aspect of it. And then I think the second one is going to be your humidity levels. So going back to the first one, I think that, you know, you can get a really nice, strong, well-formed leaf if you are giving it proper fertilization and you're giving it sort of that right ratio of nutrients. You know, none of the nutrients are being locked out, and you're just really good with your fertilizing regimen, and you have a nice healthy substrate that it's living in. So I think that's one important thing. And then the second one, like I said, humidity. It doesn't mean necessarily that you have to be growing it in a greenhouse. I think as long as you can give it some, I don't want to say this word because I know a lot of people are averse to it, but moisture, if you can keep that area, moist, it kind of breaks apart that film that sticks between the wings of the petiolar sheath or the cataphyll. It sort of loosens that with the leaf that's coming out, and it makes things like glide and a little bit more slippery. It's basically like a lubricant, because where you're going to go wrong is when you have a plant that is growing in low humidity with not much moisture at all, whether in the substrate or on the surface of the leaf itself. And that film, I feel like you guys know what I'm talking about. The film that acts like glue, essentially, it doesn't have a chance to soften and it stays hard. And so when you have a petiole that's growing and growing and growing, but you have a leaf that's stuck because of that film, then that's where you get snapped leaves. You know, I've had this issue with both greenhouse and non-greenhouse plants, and I really found the only way to combat it was making sure I was spraying it all the time if it wasn't living somewhere high humidity, and also making sure to be on a good fertilizing regimen if you're noticing that leaves are getting stuck. But you're gonna have philodendron that really come out of the cataphyll or the petiolar sheath no problem. I just feel like there are philodendron out there that require a little bit more. So I think if you can get on a good fertilizing regimen and a good, I would say, like watering regimen, that's gonna help you a lot, especially if you're not growing in a greenhouse. This one's quick. What is your favorite propagation method for philodendron? And some people are not gonna like to hear this, but water is my favorite. I find that it's the fastest and the easiest way to propagate, and I like that I can keep an eye on what's going on in there. Yeah, I like it more than any other method out there. If I couldn't water propagate a philodendron, I would say maybe my second choice would be perlite, maybe? Yeah, probably perlite. Would you recommend starting small or large with philodendron? I think it depends. I think it depends what, I'm gonna throw in some photos probably. I think it depends what your goal is with that plant and maybe even your history with that plant. So the philodendron splendid is a really good it's a really good example for me. I've tried growing the splendid from a prop cutting, like a really small plant, and I found it a little bit difficult to size up. Maybe not difficult, but I found it slower to size up than a plant like the Glorious. And especially for having hybrid vigor, I still found it to be quite slow in terms of getting larger leaves. And so the maintenance for it was a little bit more difficult because I didn't have the luxury really of just letting it grow to the ceiling. I would have to keep chopping it down every time it would reach the end of the pole or reach the end of the extension of the pole. And so every time you chop, you're kind of, like I said before, you're setting the plant back a little bit. Yeah, I just found it to be a little bit harder to size up. So I was really only able to reach like a max length or a max size. I think the largest splendid leaf I grew in my care was probably around this big, which is not very big at all. So for a plant like this, just given my history with it and knowing how fast it grows, but how little the leaves size up with every new leaf, knowing how many extensions it would take to get to a leaf that would make me feel good, that's a plant that I would start larger if I could. Maybe not as large as the plant that I'm getting from Jessie, which I'm very grateful for. Like, I'm so happy to start at that size, but like, meaning if I didn't have that option, I probably wouldn't opt to buy a small cutting. I would invest a little bit more money from someone who has taken the time to grow it a little bit larger, just so that I have a better head start and a better chance at growing a nice big leaf. But there are also plants that I would rather start as a large leaf just because I like the way it looks. So the Dean McDowell is a good example of that. I'm gonna tell you right now, like, I can definitely see the appeal in growing from a small plant, and I'll give an example of that in a bit. But if you showed me 2 plants for sale of a Dean McDowell, and you showed me a little teeny tiny stick propagation, and you showed me a nice big puffy one, I'm gonna choose the big fat puffy one because I love the way those leaves look, and it would just be hard for me to say no to it. That's not one that I find difficult to size up in terms of leaf size, but again, I think it's like, it's dependent on the plant and it's dependent on the situation. Going back to sort of that love for growing a plant growing from a small plant, my tortum is gonna be a good example of that. So back when I acquired my tortum, oh my gosh, my throat is so dry. I'm like choking in between cuts. So back when I acquired my tortum, I think it was in, I'm probably getting this wrong, 2019? No, that's so wrong. I think I got it in 2021 when I got my tortum, and I got it as a little tiny thing. I think the leaf was maybe this big. The reason that I had a plant that small is because they really weren't around, and if they were kind of expensive. I think I might have gotten mine in a trade, or maybe it was a partial trade, I can't remember. But I really didn't have a choice but to start from a really small plant. And I think if you put me in that situation where you showed me a stick prop and you showed me a nice big plant, I would probably choose the nice big plant. But having been through everything that I had been through with this tortum and seeing it mature in my care, I 100% would recommend anyone getting the tortum to start with the smaller plant, just because I know what that experience was like. So again, another thing where you have to just kind of like, I don't know, you weigh it, right? I'm trying to look at my collection. I feel like there are some plants that I can pinpoint where I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't mind buying this from a smaller plant, but there are some where I'm like, maybe it would have been nice to have something a little bit bigger. My Patriciae might be a good example of that. I mean, when I look back on our journey together, it's not always been a great one, and I definitely feel a lot of satisfaction and joy, I guess, from seeing the way it looks now. Let me just take it out. I think when I showed this to you in the philodendron collection video, it was still hardening off, and it's still not really fully hardened yet. She's still going, and like I expected, she did grow pretty significantly since then. Nice big ripply leaves. Head test, not humongous, but definitely getting somewhere. Looking at it now, I can remember everything we had been through together, where we started, and like, yeah, it's not always been a great time. Would I take that experience back? Maybe, honestly. Like, I think I wouldn't have minded starting with a plant a little bit bigger than I did, because again, to remind you, I grew this from a propagation, like a mid-cut. I think it was a mid-cut. And yeah, when I got the new leaf, it was just so tiny. No, I keep mixing this up with my hetero. I imported this, but it was a very small plant. Leaves were like this, or maybe like this. And it just took forever. It took forever to get a leaf, to get this leaf, this specific leaf. It took so long to get this. Looking back, like, if I could have afforded a larger one or started with a larger one, I think I would say, yeah, give me the bigger one, because I would have liked to get to this point a lot sooner than I did, so that I didn't have so honestly so many years of just kind of having a could be plant, like this is what it could be, like taking up space in my collection. I wish I could have appreciated it a lot more over the years. It's just really starting at the end of 2023 that I started to really like see what it could be and really appreciated it for what it is. But it took a long freaking time to get here. So yeah, this is a plant where if I didn't have it and I was offered a larger one, I would 100% choose the larger one. And this thing is so thirsty. Oh my gosh. So I hope that answers that question. I know I was kind of all over the place. That's my brain lately. Whew. Caring for philodendron in no drainage, are some thirstier than others? I don't think that this really is a question of whether or not you're growing a philodendron in no drainage. I think that it's just there are certain plants or certain philodendron out there that are thirstier than others. Like I can tell you my hetero and my my patriciae, they were both living in the same substrate, same environment for a long time, both in no drainage, but my patty was so much thirstier than my hetero. It just took in so much more water. It pushed out a lot more water in terms of guttation than my hetero. And yeah, I just think some philodendron in general are just thirstier, or they can uptake water faster, they can use it a lot faster. And then also you want to obviously consider your conditions. Plants that are living in really like warm areas are going to dry out fast. Dry areas, it's going to dry out fast. Less light, they're going to dry out a lot slower. So things like that. I can't really think of any at the top of my head where it's like, oh yeah, this plant is not very thirsty at all and this one's very, very thirsty. But I will say that yeah, it doesn't, to me, it has never really been a no drainage thing. It's just dependent on the plant. How do you prevent leaves from taking in too much water? So there are a few notes that I've made under this question. So I've noticed that some of my philodendron, if you guys don't know what guttation is, it's basically when a plant takes in water and then there's all of this excess water that has nowhere to go, so it pushes it out at the edge of the leaf margins. So I've noticed that guttation is higher when I move a plant or when I move a philodendron. So I've noticed that I noticed when I switched my plant room and I used to have my anthurium in here and most of my philodendron out there, when I moved them, my philodendron out there were guttating like crazy. Like they were pushing out so much water from the leaf tips. I had some that had really bad edema where like the cells would burst because there was just like so much water in there, I guess. Again, that could have also been a light thing because there's so much more light in here than there was on the living room shelf. And I did this switch back in February. So it was still very much winter here, very dark, very cold. But even in little transitions, even in the middle of summer or spring, a change in environment kind of triggers guttation a little bit or causes the plant to take in a lot of water, especially in that first watering after it's been moved. Another, or I guess a suggestion that I would have if you're noticing that they're taking in too much water is to bottom water. I'm not a huge bottom waterer just because one, most of my philodendron are living in no drainage, so that's not really an option for me. And two, even if my plants were all living with drainage holes, I am just way too lazy to bottom water. I know that there are some people out there that are just like avid bottom waterers, mostly because they want to avoid fungus gnats, but I just don't have the patience. I don't have the time for one, and I don't have the patience to just sit there and bottom water everything. But I do notice that plants that are bottom watered, it takes in the water that it needs and the rest kind of just sits in there. As long as the soil isn't bone dry, because if it's bone dry, it's really gonna take in everything. But if you're on a good watering schedule, it's really not gonna take in more water than it needs at that time. And so you can avoid having like cells burst in the leaves because of just kind of drenching it with water. especially in no drainage, which is why I say if you're gonna grow in no drainage, you have to be very, very mindful and conscious when you are watering. You can't just kind of like blindly go in there, because that would 100% be an issue. I think this whole rule of watering in the morning or the early afternoon, it definitely started with outdoor gardening, but I do think the same rules apply for indoor gardening too. So if you can water early instead of watering late at night, you can also avoid a lot of that guttation that you're gonna see happen overnight. Also, another reason why your plant might be taking in too much water is if you, let's say you have a really big bushy plant. Let's say you have like a trailing philodendron, right? And it's really, really huge. If you chop back a lot of those leaves, let's say you give it like a massive haircut, you chop it in half, it's still gonna have that root system that was sustaining a plant that was that large, and now you've cut off half of where that water would go. So if you have a plant that's utilizing 100% of its root system, and it's sending it out to a much smaller plant, you're gonna notice a lot of like excess water being pushed out of the leaves. This was something that I definitely observed with my micans when I would give it like really, really intense haircuts. So again, if you're gonna chop the plant but not trim back the roots, then you wanna make sure that your watering levels are kind of equal. So imagine this micans. And let's say that I keep it in the same vessel, has the same root size that it had at this size, but imagine I chopped off every single stem or vine except for one. I wouldn't be giving it the same amount of water that I normally would, because now it has like a 16th or a 20th of the plant it had before. So if I give it that same amount of water that I would when it was large, that water really has like nowhere to go. So again, it's kind of just like keeping a good balance, I guess, in terms of watering ratio to the plant size, and keeping in mind the root system size, which is why I do like to trim back roots when I chop plants, because I kind of want it to be equal. I mean, obviously you want to kind of lean towards the larger root system. Like I'd much rather have a large root system on a plant than a small one. But at the same time, if I'm giving something a huge haircut, I don't necessarily feel it necessary to have such a large root system. So this timer has gone off 3 times now, which means I've been filming for an hour and a half. Holy smokes. Okay, I'm gonna take a walk-in break and you're gonna take an ad break. I guess the last suggestion that I have in terms of this question is just to get on a more regular watering schedule. I am not the best at this for sure. I feel like there are times where I'm super proactive about watering and I'm constantly like making sure that things aren't dried out completely. But if I have to be fully honest with myself, I definitely lean on that side of like, oh crap, that one is wilted, or oh crap, that one is bone dry, to the point where like, you guys know that sound that pond makes when it's so dry, and like when you water it, it kind of like sizzles. I'm a sizzler. And so yeah, I do notice many things going wrong, particularly with my philodendron when I'm more defensive with watering and I'm not so on top of it, and I let longer drought periods go with certain plants. And so I think if you can even just get on a schedule. I know that it's kind of hard to be on a schedule, especially when you have as many plants as we do, because they're all gonna have different watering requirements. But if you can just like, I guess, be proactive about checking your plants regularly to see if they need water, not letting them get to the point of dehydration where you're seeing it in the leaves. I think a good rule of thumb in terms of growing anthurium, philodendron, alocasia is don't wait until the leaves tell you it's thirsty. Like, you should always, I guess, if you are trying to be like the perfect plant parent, like always aim to have the leaves looking perky and hydrated. When you let a plant go so long without water to the point where it's literally flopped over, you know, that plant is going to go through stress and stress and stress. If it keeps doing that, you're gonna notice a lot of issues with the plant in terms of its root health, overall health, stunted growth, things like that. Kind of like people, like if we constantly only drink when you were just like on the brink of death, that's probably not the best for us. We kind of drink when we feel that little hint of being thirsty. And it's not like we just like gulp down water. We're just like constantly taking little sips of water throughout the day. And so that's kind of the mentality that you want to have with watering. But to me, it's not, with the amount of plants that us crazy collectors have, it's not really realistic to hold yourself to that standard all the time. And so at the same time, don't guilt yourself if that's not your reality, because it's definitely not mine. How do you decide who gets a moss pole? I honestly think it comes down to how much I like you. In general, I try and get all of my philodendron on poles if I can, but that's also not the truth, because let's say even going back to 2021 when I had maybe double or triple the amount of philodendron that I have now in my collection, I would really only give poles to the philodendron I really loved. I felt like if I just had like a filler philodendron, and I've had many filler philodendron. Say that 10 times fast. Filler philodendron. Yeah, I've had a lot of those plants, and I would kind of just like try and get away with what I could. If that meant a chopstick or a little tiny bamboo stick or a rock to hold it up, then I would. But I definitely invested more time in like my high ticket philodendron, or the ones that I just really, really wanted to see mature. And that's really all there is to it. I'll say now that pretty much, I want to say all of my philodendron are on poles, the ones that need to be on poles, with the exception of one. I think I only have one philodendron in my collection that doesn't have a pole, and that would be the SP Napo Purple down here. I'm probably just gonna stick a chopstick or a bamboo stake on that guy. But everything else has a pole, and that's because I have tapered down my collection so much over the last year, and definitely aggressively since I found out I was pregnant. And so I really am only left with the philodendron that I love, like that I really, really love and that I can see myself with long term. So that's why they all have poles. So yeah, that's how I decide. This one I'm just gonna quickly touch on. The question was, how do you get them to flower? I don't freaking know. I know that I said I was only going to answer questions that I felt confident answering, but I wanted to mention this because maybe we can have sort of a discussion in the comments, or you guys can talk amongst yourself in the comments if there's anybody that is well versed in getting philodendron to flower. I've heard that high nitrogen content, so like fertilizers with high nitrogen, can promote flowering in philodendron. I don't know the truth or science behind that. It could be some anecdotal evidence or anecdotal advice. And so yeah, don't take my word at face value, but I wanted to include it because I do have it on my bucket list. I wanna hybridize a philodendron. I wanna do it at least once. I don't have a strong desire to do it as much as I do with my anthurium, but I want to just like say that I hybridized a philodendron, even if it's not like a new hybrid. I just want to try it at least once. So if anybody has any thoughts or like advice or whatever on getting philodendron to flower, or if you have any observations you'd like to share, please share that in the comments. How did you put your tortum on a pole? I mean, I put a pole in there. I definitely have a pole in there. But if you guys watched the philodendron collection, you will see that, and I'll throw in maybe a screenshot if I can get one from that video because I'm too lazy to take it out now. But it's literally like growing out. It's so here's the pole, and it's going like this. It like started to grow up, and now it's like crawling away from the pole. It wants nothing to do with it. So if when it comes time to repot that plant, it's been sizing up so well without being attached to a pole that I probably won't even bother with a pole next time. If anything, I'll probably just do like a bamboo stake or like 2 bamboo stakes to keep it upright, because it does get very like front heavy, because mine isn't growing like 360, which I'm actually grateful for. It's all facing the front. And so yeah, it does have a tendency to kind of like lean forward. So I would really only use the bamboo stake to kind of keep it upright and not toppling over. But I don't think that I'm gonna use a pole, especially because I don't want it to hit a mature, I don't want it to get too mature. I really like this size that it's at. So yeah, I don't have any tips on getting tortum on a pole because mine does not want to climb a pole. What do you do with a cutting that won't root? I throw it away. I'm just kidding, I don't throw it away. I usually just wait for it to die. That's usually what happens, not by choice. That's just what happens. I can think of I can think of 3 philodendron that were so hard for me to root that they died. No, 2. I know the hetero is hard to root. I just know that. Alice, she gave me a cutting of the hetero. It was like partially rooted, like it had an aerial root with like 2 roots coming out of it, but they were very small. And it took forever to get that plant to be like a fully rooted plant. Then the 2 that I have experience with actually rooting myself from a cutting, one of them is the philodendron felix. Throw in a photo of the felix. I thought I saw something on my neck. I'm like, how do you get a hickey without remembering you got a hickey? So the philodendron felix was extremely, extremely hard for me to root. I feel like I barely got a chance with that plant. I can't remember if I bought a cutting from Lauren or if she gave me a cutting, but that one never rooted for me and it just eventually died. It was in water, wouldn't root in water. I tried even with a bubbler, didn't root. I tried perlite. I didn't try soil. I tried perlite, I tried leca. I don't think that I had tree fern fiber at that time when I owned the Felix, but if I had it now, I would probably give tree fern fiber a go. But yeah, I just didn't have luck rooting this plant. It just eventually mushed and died. And then also the philodendron sherberichii equigenera. That one was so freaking hard to root. And even when it did start to push out the tiniest little roots, it just hated the transition. So anytime I tried to transition it to a permanent substrate, it would just abort. Everything would abort. But typically my go-to for philodendron, like really stubborn rooters, like in the past I've had good luck with water and a bubbler. A bubbler is such, okay, it's a luxury for sure, because it's not something that's just like $5 or $10, but to me it's a great investment if you are constantly trying to root things, because if you're a water rooter like me and you're not that great with changing out waters, things can get bad so fast. Like I can't even describe that smell of just like gunky, nasty water. It's unreal. It's unlike anything else. It will take you out. But a bubbler just keeps things nice and fresh for long periods of time because there's bubbling happening and like water is being kicked up. Water is evaporating really fast. It kind of forces you to keep adding new water, and so it keeps things fresher for longer. And so yeah, I would highly recommend getting a bubbler if that is something that you are struggling with, and I will link the bubbler that I use in the description. What is your go-to substrate for philodendron? My brain is automatically saying soil. I'm gonna look at my philodendron, see who's in soil. Soil, pond, soil, pond. Okay, I'm gonna say soil. I think soil is really great for philodendron. I don't know why. My go-to when I'm thinking about repotting a philodendron or getting a philodendron nice and established, my brain doesn't automatically go, oh, I need to get it in pond. I don't know. I just find I correlate philodendron with soil, and I just like using soil or some kind of organic medium for philodendron. So that's my go-to. The 2 philodendron within sight that I can see that are growing not in an organic medium is my majestic. This guy, she's growing in pond. I've got my who are you? Oh, and my my glorious. Oh, and my Micans. So So my micans and my glorious are also growing in pond. I chose pond for the mican specifically because that one is so freaking thirsty. I don't know why I chose pond for the glorious. I think if it got bigger than it is now, I probably would try a soil conversion. I just feel more at home and I feel more comfortable with philodendron in soil. And that's just, yeah, that's just my experience or my opinion. Ambient conditions or greenhouse. Honestly, if I could choose in a perfect world, I wish that I could grow all of my philodendron in a greenhouse. Not to say that I don't enjoy seeing them outside, seeing them in my living room. Like my tortum is in my living room now, and I just, yeah, I love, a big part of me having plants is so that I can enjoy them just in my common spaces, because I do see them as like a massive or a major decorative aspect to my home. But I think because with most of my philodendron, my goal is to size them up and see them in a more mature form. Yeah, in a perfect world, I wish that I could just throw them all in a massive greenhouse and watch them get really big, because it would be so much easier to maintain the humidity, maintain the heat, maintain the poles so that they're wet, like I could just spray freely in there. One challenge of growing philodendron outside of a greenhouse and maintaining poles is, yeah, keeping them wet, I guess. And so if you're not taking them to the shower to spray it down, like you have to be really good about remembering to water the pole. Most of my philodendron are growing outside of greenhouses. I think the only one I have living in a greenhouse right now is my philodendron Billietiae variegated, because that one I'm still trying to like get a leaf to come out of it. My gigas, my Patriciae, my Biliaf, Lita Red, whatever we're calling it. I don't know if you would consider this a greenhouse because it's like, it's open. And then also my SP Napo Purple, which is probably gonna come out of there soon. And that's really like the choice of growing it outside of a greenhouse. It's not like for the reason of my anthurium, of wanting to enjoy them, avoiding fungal issues and things like that. It's mostly because they grow so fast and they grow so big that I don't have the space to keep them in greenhouses. But I think my choice would be to grow them in a greenhouse if that was an option for me for all of my philodendron. And then the last one isn't a question, it's more of a statement. Someone said, why would you buy a philodendron when you could buy an anthurium? I feel attacked. I feel personally attacked and victimized by this person. I definitely think there is a different allure to growing philodendron versus anthurium. There are things that philodendron do for me in terms of bringing joy to me personally that anthurium don't do, and vice versa. I think growing anthurium and growing philodendron are so different, and I almost kind of hate that they're being compared so much because the experience is so different. You know, with most anthurium, you don't have to worry about poles. You can size them up without a pole. You don't have to deal with extrafloral nectaries on anthurium. I think both genus, they present their own challenges for sure, but with those challenges also comes a different kind of joy. And so it's just one of those things, like if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. But I think that for me, watching a philodendron grow from its tiny little juvenile form to its mature form is just such a magical experience that I can't really compare to anthurium. So yeah, I mean, I get it, you know, some people are just like completely like anti-philodendron or just like all about the anthurium, but I feel like I can appreciate them both for what they are and the separate joys that they bring. So yeah, I just thought it was funny, so I included it. But I really wanted to emphasize my philodendron over the last few weeks, and I think I'm gonna make it a priority to really feature them in 2024. Just as a, you know, like, we're still here. The philodendron lovers are still here. We're still kicking, and I want to keep that love alive. So we're gonna close off this video because I am hungry. My voice is cutting out and I've been at this for way longer than I thought I was gonna be. Oh my gosh. Okay, we're gonna quickly go over my wish list. Okay, so I brought this up before, I brought it up earlier. This is Ecuagenera's Philodendron Pink Glory, and it's a cross between a gloriosum and a leinamii. I've said this many times, but I think really anything for me crossed with the gloriosum is gonna be a win. The gloriosum itself is just such a beautiful plant, and it passes off some of its best features every time it's crossed with something, and this is no exception. I have not seen it in person, but I'm guessing it has the leaf texture of a Dean McDowell. That's what I'm guessing, because similar to the philodendron Dean McDowell, you have the gloriosum, which has a velvet leaf. You have the postizanum, which is a shiny, glossy leaf. Same thing. You have the gloriosum, and then you have the leinamii. So I think just by looking at it, I think it has the same texture as a Dean McDowell, which I freaking love. The leaf isn't super thick. I don't think it's gonna be as thick as the leinamii, because the leinamii can have actually a pretty thick leaf. But if it's anything like the Dean, I don't know if I could live without it, you guys. Like, the leaf itself is so beautiful. It has like that perfect leaf shape. It has the venation that really pushes all the way to the edge of the leaf margins, kind of like the Dean McDowell, which gives it that extra pillowy look. And then it has the midrib, similar to the Summer Glory, where it's just like this pinkish, what is that word I used before? Pink parfait, like a parfait marmalade? I forgot what I said before, but like the perfect pinkish, orangish tone. And it's a crawler. I wish it was a climber, but it looks like it's a crawler. But I think at some point I'm gonna need this plant. I need this one. This is a non-negotiable for me. I'm gonna have this plant at some point. I'm manifesting it right now, and it's only $45 with Ecuagenera. So anywho, yeah, that one is probably top of my wish list right now in terms of my attainable wish list plants. The next one is more on the unattainable side, and that's the variegated tortum. You know how much I love my tortum, and I just think it would be so fun to have a variegated one. I like that the variegation on this, in terms of the color of it, it's very reminiscent of like the caramel marble, and I love those shades on the caramel marble. It's not so bright and wow like an Elbow or even like a Florida Beauty. The colors are a little bit more like muted and like mature. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's so pretty. And every time I see a photo of one, I'm just like, maybe one day. And then I see a listing and it's like $7,000, and I'm like, okay, maybe not. But yeah, it would be so cool to have a variegated tortum, not for the like clout or whatever. Just, yeah, my love for the tortum runs very deep, and I just think it would be really fun to own a variegated version of it. The next one is going to be a philodendron gloriosum crossed with a maximum. And I think a lot of people would look at this plant and just be like, oh, it's okay, or like, it looks so similar to just the maximum, or it looks so similar to like the Billy or something. But I see this and my heart, it goes pitter patter. I think because it kind of looks like it would have, again, the same texture as the Dean McDowell, I think that might be my favorite leaf texture. I've never actually sat down and thought about this, like, what is my favorite leaf texture? You would think that it's like the velvetiness of like a gloriosum, or the velvetiness of like an anthurium, but I think that perfect texture of the Dean McDowell, I think that's my favorite, honestly. And I look at the gloriosum maximum and I'm like, I think it would have that same kind of look. So I love that it has really that maximum leaf. Like, that is a maximum. That's as maximum gets. But the bright white venation and the thickness of the venation that is reminiscent of the gloriosum just gives it that extra like deliciousness. And it's a little bit more on the puffy side from what I've seen than just a regular maximum, where it's more of a flat leaf. So I really like this plant. Now, I don't know I say that it's on my wish list, but I almost wonder, like, if it was in my house, would I even have the space for it? Like now when I don't just add things on my wish list because it's really pretty and I really like it. I am pretty good now about being conscious of like, okay, if I do have the opportunity to buy this and I do want to keep it long term, like, do I have somewhere to grow it? And I don't know, like this seems like a plant that would get very, very overwhelming. So I think that if I did get this plant, something would have to give. I think I'd have to get rid of another big philodendron to make space for it. But just looking at this leaf, I think it's beautiful, and yeah, I really enjoy it. Talking about, wow, everything has a gloriosum in pretty much on my wish list. So the next one is going to be a variegated gloriosum. And I know that there's a kind of a stink right now about, like, you know, variegated plants being like all the hype and people only want plants that are variegated. But I guess the reason why I have so many variegated plants, well, 2. That's not that many. No, 3. The reason I've added so many variegated philodendron to my wish list is because I kind of already have all of the philodendron that I would ever need and want. So there's not really much else for me to collect. But now I'm kind of like, okay, but which philodendron do I really love? And which ones would be cool to have a variegated version of it? And so, like, if I could have a variegated Dean McDowell, a variegated gloriosum, variegated, I don't think I'd love a variegated, like, heterocraspidon, but definitely, like, the big pillowy ones. I just think it would be really fun to grow. And I see a lot of the variegated gloriosum that are out there right now, and I'm just like, so pretty, like that sectoral variegation. I've even seen some that have like a speckly variegation, and that's really pretty to me too. But I love the variegated gloriosum that is sectoral white with some pink or even just yellow. I wouldn't even mind like a green on green variegated gloriosum. I just think it would be something nice to contrast the other philodendron that I have in my collection, and yeah, it would be fun to add that one. And then the last variegated plant on my collection, or the next variegated philodendron on my wish list, is going to be the variegated micans. I'm not quite sure if this is one that I practically want to own, or if I just like still have it on my wish list because I love the micans so much. The reason why I'm a little bit sort of wish-washy about this one is because I know people that own it, and they have just said it's kind of a pain in the butt. Like, it doesn't really like to grow. The reversion rate is very high, like the reversion chances are very high, so they're constantly having to chop back. And if it is variegated, sometimes it goes too variegated to the point where it just dies off because it's like all pink or it's all white or whatever. So again, looking at the entirety of my collection, looking at the projects that I have, I don't know if I am willing to have a plant in my collection that stresses me out like that. Like, I think if the variegated micans was super stable, really easy to grow, just like the regular one, I think I would be more active in trying to add this one to my collection. But I'm kind of like appreciating it just from a distance right now, and I would never pay the price that they are, for sure. Not with the reputation that it's had so far. But do I see some really pretty variegated micans out there? Absolutely. Would I probably take a plant if it was offered to me, whether gifted or at a good price? Probably. But again, I approach this relationship with caution for sure. So the last one that I want to include on the wish list, and this is more of an honorable mention because I don't know how attainable it is. Like, I don't know if this is like, you have to just like know somebody, you have to know somebody to be able to get it. But I stumbled upon it one day on a Facebook group, and that is a red Congo crossed with a plougmanii. I love the plougmanii. I did have the plough on my wish list, but it's a different kind of plougmanii. It's not the one with any variegation. It's just like completely green, and it's so round. Like, if a if a plowmanii was a dorayaki, it's just like a plate. It's just so round, or a bowl. So yeah, I love that it has that plowmanii look. It kind of has like that, like the ruffled edges a little bit of the plowmanii. But it has the red Congo leaf shape. Like it looks like a red Congo, just a little bit more round. Has the texture, it seems, of the red Congo. And I think I get so suckered in by the pink venation. When I see anything with a pink midrib or pink veins, I lose sense of reality a little bit, and I lose myself. Again, I don't know, I've never seen this offered for sale. This was literally just posted as somebody's personal collection, and I feel like this person might be a hybridizer. I wouldn't doubt if they were, and this is one that they just hybridized and just have in their collection. But yeah, it would be freaking cool to have this plant for sure. So yeah, that was gonna be the last one on my wish list. And now we are at the end of the video, and I'm at the end of my rope. Oh my gosh, my throat hurts so bad. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I feel like the questions I got in terms of philodendron were definitely more opinion questions rather than care. Definitely I got less care questions for philodendron than I did for anthurium, and I think it's because, I don't know, I feel like philodendrons are just easier to care for. That's just my opinion. I just struggle with anthurium so much. Oh my god, that plant is so thirsty. But yeah, I hope that I answered all your questions. If I didn't, please feel free to leave it in the comments. I'm gonna try and be active in this comment thread and just answer anything that I didn't get to in this video. We'll see how I do this year in terms of collecting new philodendron. I mentioned this in many other videos, but I'm not really seeking out philodendron or anthurium or alocasia or anything really this year. I mean, one, I am preparing for a child, so I've tried to purge my collection as much as possible. But this year, I'm manifesting, it's the year of the trailing plants for me. I want to add more trailing plants to my collection. Trailing ripsalis, trailing euphorbia, trailing whatever. I want all the weirdos, trailing cissus. That's where my heart is for this year. But anyway, guys, I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna go. Thank you guys for hanging out with me on another Saturday. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and I will see you in the next one.